Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. There's a guy in like me in every state and federal prison in America. I guess I'm the guy who can get it for you. Tailor, tailor-made cigarettes, a bag of reefer if you're partial to that, a bottle of brandy to celebrate your son or daughter's high school graduation, or anything else within the reason. That is, it wasn't always that way.
I came to Shawshank when I was just 20, and I am one of the few people in our happy little family willing to own up to what he did. I committed murder. I put a large insurance policy on my wife, who was 3 years older than I was, and then I fixed the brakes on the Chevrolet Coupe her father had given us as a wedding present. It worked out exactly as I had planned, except I hadn't planned on her stopping to pick up the neighbor woman and the neighbor woman's infant son on their way down Castle Hill and into town. The brakes let go and the car crashed through the bushes at the edge of the town common, gathering speed. Bystanders said it must have been doing 50 or better when it hit the base of the Civil War statue and burst into flames.
I also hadn't planned on getting caught, but caught I was. I got a season's pass into this place. Maine has no death penalty, but the district attorney saw to it that I was tried for all 3 deaths and given 3 life sentences, to run one after another. That fixed up any chance of parole I might have for a long, long time. The judge called What Have I Done a hideous, heinous crime, and it was. But it was also in the past now. You look it up in the yellowing files of Castle Rock Call, where the big headlines announcing my conviction look sort of funny and antique next to the news of Hitler and Mussolini and FDR's alphabet soup agencies.
Have I rehabilitated myself, you ask? I don't even know what that word means, at least as far as prisons and corrections go. I think it's a politician's word. It may have some other meaning, and it may be that I will have a chance to find out, but that is the future. Something cons teach themselves not to think about. I was young, good-looking, and from the poor side of town. I knocked up a pretty, sulky, headstrong girl who lived in one of the fine old houses on Carbine Street. Her father was agreeable to the marriage if I would take a job in the optical company he owned and work my way up. I found out that what he really had in mind was keeping me in his house and under his thumb like a disagreeable pet that has not quite been housebroken and which may bite. Enough hate eventually piled up to cause me to do what I did. Given a second chance, I would not do it again. But I'm not sure that means I am rehabilitated. Anyway, it's not me I want to tell you about. I want to tell you about a guy named Andy Dufresne. But before I can tell you about Andy, I have to explain a few other things about myself. It won't take long.
As I said, I've been a guy who can get it for you here at Shawshank for damn near 40 years. And that doesn't just mean contraband items like extra cigarettes or booze, although those items always top up the list. But I've gotten thousands of other items from men doing time here, some of them perfectly legal, yet hard to come by in a place where you've supposedly been brought to be punished. There was one fellow who was in for raping a little girl and exposing himself to dozens of others. I got him 3 pieces of pink Vermont marble, and he did 3 lovely sculptures out of them. A baby, a boy, about 12, and a bearded young man. He called the 3 ages of Jesus in those pieces of sculpture, and now in the parlor of a man who used to be a governor of the state. Or here's a name for you to remember if you grew up in North Massachusetts: Robert Allen Coate. In 1951, he tried to rob the first mercantile bank of Mechanic Falls, and the holdup turned into a bloodbath. 6 dead in the end, 2 of them members of the gang, 3 of them hostages, 1 of them a young state cop who put his head up at the wrong time, and got a bullet in the eye. Kai had a penny collection. Naturally, they weren't going to let him have it in there. But with a little help from his mother and middleman, who used to drive a laundry truck, I was able to get it for him. I told Bobby, "You must be crazy wanting to have a coin collection in a stone hotel full of thieves." He looked at me and smiled. I said, "I know where to keep them. They'll be safe enough, don't you worry." And he was right. Bobby Cott died of a brain tumor in 1967, but that coin collection has never turned up.
I've gotten men chocolates on Valentine's Day. I got 3 of those green milkshakes they serve at McDonald's around St. Patty's Day for a crazy Irish man named O'Malley. I even arranged for a midnight showing of Deep Throat and The Devil and Miss Jones for a party of 20 men who had pooled their resources to rent the films. Although I ended up doing a week in solitary for that little escapade. It's the risk you run when you're the guy who can get it. I've gotten reference books and fuck books, joke novelties like hand buzzers and itching powder, and on more than one occasion I've seen that a long-timer has gotten a pair of panties from his wife or his girlfriend, and I guess you'll know what guys in here do with such items during the long nights when time draws out like a blade. I don't get all those things gratis, and for some items the price comes high. But I don't do it just for the money. What good is money to me? I'm never going to own a Cadillac car or fly off to Jamaica for 2 weeks in February. I do it for the same reason that a good butcher will only sell you fresh meat. I got a reputation, and I want to keep it. The only 2 things I refuse to handle are guns and heavy drugs. I won't help anyone kill himself or anyone else. I have enough killing on my mind to last me a lifetime. Yeah, I'm a regular Neiman Marcus. And so when Andy Dufresne came to me in 1949 and asked if I could smuggle Rita Hayworth into prison for him, I said it would be no problem at all. And it wasn't.
When Andy came to Shawshank in 1948, he was 30 years old. He was a short, neat little man with sandy hair and small, cleaver hands. He wore golden-rimmed spectacles. His fingernails were always clipped, and they were always clean. That's a funny thing to remember about a man, I suppose, but it seems the sun summed Andy up for me. He always looked as if he should have been wearing a tie. On the outside, he had been a vice president in the trust department. Thank you. Of a large Portland bank. Good work for a man as young as he was, especially when you consider how conservative most banks are. And you have to multiply that conservatism by 10, you get up into New England, where folks don't like to trust men with their money unless he's bald, limping, and constantly plucking at his pants to get his trust around straight. Andy was in for murdering his wife and her lover.
As I believe I have said, everyone in prison is an innocent man. Oh, they read that scripture the way those holy rollers on TV read the book of Revelation. They were the victims of judges with hearts of stone and balls to match, or incompetent lawyers, or police frame-ups, or just bad luck. They read the scripture, but you can see a different scripture in their faces. Most cons are a low sort, no good to themselves or anyone else, and their worst luck was that their mothers carried them to term.
In all my years at Shawshank, there have been less than 10 men who I believed when they told me they were innocent. Ouch. Andy Dufresne was one of them. Although I only became convinced of his innocence over a period of years, I have been on the jury that heard his case in Portland Superior Court. Over 6 stormy weeks in 1947 through 48, I would have voted to convict too.
It was one hell of a case, all right. One of those juicy ones with all the right elements. There was a beautiful girl with society connections, dead. A local sports figure, also dead. And a prominent young businessman in the dock. There was this, plus all the scandal in the newspaper could hint at. The prosecution had an open and shut case. The trial only lasted as long as it did because the DA was planning to run for the U.S. House of Representatives, and he wanted John Q. Public to get a good look at his resume. It was a crackerjack legal circus, with spectators getting in line at 4 in the morning, despite the sub-zero temperatures, to assure themselves a seat.
The facts of the prosecution case that Andy never tested were these: that he had a wife, Linda Collins Dufresne,